You want to know what are all the different ways letters can make sounds. You can figure it out yourself. Do the same exact thing I just did. I just showed you exactly how to figure it out. In this video, I'm going to show you how to teach letters that can make more than one sound. And the example I'm going to use is the letter G, because the letter G can make two different sounds. It can say G, like in gum, or it can say J, like in gem. And if you've started teaching your little one to read, it can be really confusing to know which of those two sounds do I teach them and in what order. Do I show them at the same time? One than the other? Is one more important than the other? So I'm going to break all of that down for you. You can use the same thing to apply to the letter C, which says K and S, or to the vowel sounds, which sometimes say their short sound and sometimes say the long sound. There's many different sounds that change depending on the situation. And so we're going to tackle the easiest way to teach this. And if you're watching this video, I'm going to make a couple assumptions about you, okay? I'm going to assume that you are not a trained professional teacher, okay? If so, there's a lot of technical stuff that we can get into later, but I'm going to try and keep this super simple to understand. That's number one. Number two, I'm going to assume that your kid is starting from the beginning, that you do not have a kid who's already reading really, really well, but they're still in the process of learning their sounds for the first time. And if I'm right about those two assumptions, this video is for you. It's going to be super easy to follow, I promise you. And I'm going to help this pretty complicated topic seem really easy and really doable for you, okay? So let's start with the basics. We've got this letter. We've got the letter G, okay? Again, there are other letters that make more than one sound. We're going to use this example, okay? The letter G has two different sounds it can make. It can make G and it can make J. Now, the G sound is called its hard sound. The J is the soft sound. And what we do when we're teaching letters that make more than one sound is we're going to start with the hard sound, the primary sound the letter makes, which is G, okay? We're going to start by calling this G. And every time we show this to our kid, we are going to say, this sound says G. Now you say it. This sound says G. Now you say it. We're going to teach them that hard sound, that primary sound first, and we are not going to worry about any of the other sounds this can make because we don't want to confuse them. We're going to keep it super simple, build their confidence, help them understand what this says. Next, we're going to do the same thing with the other 25 letters. Whether they make one sound, two sounds, three sounds, the letter Y makes a ton of sounds. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to teach them all of the basic sounds of these letters. And we're going to make sure our kid knows all 26 basic letter sounds, okay? Once they know that, this is where the fun part starts. We start to read words with those sounds in it. Again, at this point, your kid only knows the letter G says G. They don't know the other sound yet. So we start to give them words like gum or like game or like got, where that G is going to be making that same sound. And now they know the sound and we start to blend. G, gum. We start to blend words, okay? We give them practice and they're starting to see and experience the letter G in a word and they're learning how to read it. A couple reasons why we start with this primary sound. It is the most common sound the letter is going to make. G is going to say G more than it says J. And it is going to be especially the most common sound that they read in early reading books. So your kid is much, much, much more likely to see the word game than they are to see the word magic. It's much more common. So we're going to teach them this is what the sound says more of the time. Not all the time, more of the time than it says the other sound, okay? We start with this, we get the basic sound, we say, okay, the letter G, it says G. Here are some examples, we can read it, we can do it, we're good to go, okay? Then, this is what you came for. We're at that point, and only at that point. If you're not at that point, go back and do that stuff I just said, teach the basics. That's when we start to work in the other sound it can make. And at this point, we've got to help them understand not only can this letter say the G sound, sometimes it also says J. I'm going to give you a quick little test. You can pause the video, you can stop it in a second, turn it back on, but here's my test for you, okay? When you get a piece of paper, a whiteboard, something to write with, anything, okay? Divide it into 2 columns. And on one side, I want you to put words with that hard G sound. And on the other side, I want you to put words with that soft G sound. For example, I put these 2 words in the thumbnail. I might put the word gum over here, which has the hard sound. I might put the word gem over there, which has the soft sound. And I want you to take a minute, don't go too long. You're gonna close the video, you're not gonna come back. Take like 60 seconds and write down as many of those hard sounds as you can and as many of those soft sounds as you can, okay? You can stop here, write down your list. Now, if you're back with me, you should see a pattern in the words that you wrote down. Because with most rules in phonics, it seems random. It seems like, oh, sometimes the letter just says this. Sometimes it just says this. But there's almost always a rule and a pattern underneath. So with the letter G, what you should see, if you look through your list of all of the hard sounds, you should see after that G, there might be a U, there might be an O, or there might be an A. Golf, game, right? A U, an O, or an A. Go to the other side, gem, right? Gym, which has a Y after it, or a word I said before, magic, which has the I after it. So we start to see, okay, there's an E, a Y, or an I, right? The hard G sound, that primary sound, is gonna be the letter G followed by U, O, or A. That soft sound is gonna be the letter G followed by E, I, or Y. And that's a rule that's gonna hold up in most circumstances. Why do I have you pause? Why do I have you do it? Why not just tell you? Well, you are really worried not about the letter G, you're worried about every letter that makes multiple sounds, right? You wanna know what are all the different ways letters can make sounds. You can figure it out yourself. Do the same exact thing I just did. I just showed you exactly how to figure it out, okay? As adults, you know how to read them, you just don't know the rules. The thing is, because you can read them, you can figure out the rules. You can figure out the E-I-Y rule all on your own by writing out all the times it makes that sound and figuring it out. We can do this with almost any phonics pattern. We can say, okay, why does O-O say sometimes and oo sometimes? Why does C say k sometimes and s other times? Write out a list of all the times it makes that one sound, all the times it makes the other sound, and find the pattern. Look at the letter that comes before it. Look at the letter that comes after it and see what you can pick up on, okay? You can find this pattern all by yourself. So once you find the pattern and you know, okay, your kid knows, what they know is that G says G. What you know is you know the situations in which it doesn't. So this is where we're gonna add a little bit of detail to what they've already learned, because they've learned that this says G and now it's time to add a little bit more. So we say, okay, little Spence, okay, little buddy, we learned that G says G, and we've practiced reading different words with that sound. But guess what? Sometimes it makes a different sound. Sometimes it can also say J. Now you say it. We're gonna build this up, we're gonna make this feel special, right? This is a really special thing, this letter can make 2 sounds. So we've practiced a lot with G saying G. Now, let's practice with this word saying ch, and let's look at some examples. So once we've built their interest, we got them excited about it, now we're gonna start giving them some examples of different words that have that j sound in it, right? And I'm thinking E, I, and Y. So I'm gonna write them down. I can use a different color if I want to and mix it up, right? But now we're gonna start to read and we're gonna start to practice these by themselves. We'll have them sound out and they're gonna go, G, eh, and you go, oh, remember today it makes a different sound. We're gonna practice a different sound. That sound is J. And I'm gonna try again, they're like, oh, okay. J, eh, gem, right? And we're gonna work up from there. We're gonna give them lots and lots and lots of examples. it's important at this time, we are not treating this letter like it's g anymore. They've learned that, they've stored it in their brain. We're not practicing those examples now. Right now we're practicing the other examples. We're learning the other sound it says. We're gonna give them lots and lots of exposure reading this, okay? We're not gonna get into the rules and explain to them what we learned. We're not gonna talk at this point of, E, I, and Y makes the G say J. O, A, and U makes the G say G. If you have a kid who's like first grade or older, tell them all the rules you want, okay? With a really little kid, 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, explaining those rules is gonna be even harder than just trying to teach them. Just focus on the examples. Give them as many of those words to read as possible. And what's gonna happen in your kid's head is this. All the first words they read with G, all those first words where the G said G, they all had an A, an O, or U after it. And they may not know the rule by name the same way that you didn't know before the video, but they're starting to store that rule in their head. Then we teach them, okay, not only did G say G, but G says J. And let's look at these. And every time after that G, they're gonna see an E, an I, or Y. They're gonna start to store that. They're starting to get used to it. They're gonna start practicing. Okay, this time it says J. And your kid now knows, okay, sometimes it says G, sometimes it says J. They're not gonna be able to tell you why, they're just gonna know. So we start to then mix them together. We say, okay, you've learned the hard sound, you've learned the soft sound, now let's give you some practice with both. And again, we take the whiteboard, we start to sprinkle in some examples of G making that hard sound, and we give them practice with both. And this is where you're gonna hear your kid make a ton of mistakes. On some words, they'll use the hard, where it's supposed to be soft. Some, they'll use the soft, where it's supposed to be hard, and you'll just gently correct them, okay? If you wanna sprinkle in the rules, you can. If you wanna be like, oop, that E is making it say J, that I is making it say J. In those specific cases, you can, especially if your kid is a little bit older. If you've got a kid who's really, really small, just be like, you said jum. Is jum a word? They're gonna be like, no. I'm like, So you tried the G saying J. What's the other sound that G makes? They're gonna be like, G. Make great. So let's try it with G in this word. And they're gonna say gum. And I can't tell you exactly why this works. I can't tell you exactly how it works. I don't have all the data to say, here's exactly what's happening. But what I can say is if you start with the primary sound and they read a bunch of words with it, then you move to the secondary sound, that soft sound, they read a bunch of words with it. Then you put both together and they read a lot of examples of each. And you correct them every time they make a mistake. You help guide them towards which version of that sound to use. Your kid is going to internalize those rules without you ever having to name them. They're just gonna know. Sometimes it says this, sometimes it says this, and they're gonna be able to look at a word that they've never seen before and pick the right version of it. They're just gonna know, okay? It happens, I've seen it happen hundreds of times. This is the most basic way to go about it. We teach the first one, then we teach the second one, then we teach them together. And it's important to remember, this video is about the letter G, but it's really not. It's really about any letter that can make more than one sound. You know, looking at G, without even knowing the name of the rules, you know why it says J sometimes and why it says G other times. You've read it enough times to know that. We can do the same thing for our little ones by being very intentional in the order and the activities that we use when we're teaching them these letter sounds. So I hope this video is very helpful for you and makes something very complicated feel very easy and very doable. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to support. I do go over all of these more advanced sounds in my reading books course, which has these different fluency passages. So one of the most important things here is that we're giving our kid lots of practice with these sounds. And in these fluency passages, I have, like, for example, right here, O, I have a full passage where they're gonna practice reading the O, the a full passage where they're gonna practice reading the O, like in cool, and then a full passage where they're gonna flip back and forth between and oo together. So these passages actually walk kids through the same progression I just told you. We're going to learn the first sound, then the next one, and then we're going to practice both at the same time. So this is definitely a helpful resource. This in my reading books course, I have a ton of resources in that reading books course specifically for how to teach these more advanced sounds, which I hope is helpful for you. And otherwise, if you have any questions, just let me know and I'm happy to support. And until next time, I will talk to you soon.